Welcome, everyone, to the Breakaway USA podcast, the podcast that takes a critical look at the ever evolving landscape of American culture and explores the issues that concern many who value tradition, freedom of expression, and conservative values. We're here to dig deep into the transformation of the American society and the rise of wokeness. My name is Fabian, and of course, as always, we have Mr. Gentry and Mr. Mike. What's up, guys? How has the week been going? It's been a very busy week for news.
Stuff's just flying at us at Mach speed. I think potentially that's one of their strategies, is to just overwhelm us with all this bad news so we get distracted from what's really important, I think.
Yeah, it's very hard to fact check when the inconsistencies come out just so quickly.
So we've seen these clips of these CIA agents that explain that they had agents working for the CIA in these main publications like the New York Times or wherever, and they would feed them actual disinformation to confuse people, essentially.
Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA.
Can you do this with responsible reporters?
Yes, the Church Committee brought it out in 1975, and then Woodward and Bernstein put an article in Rolling Stone a couple of years later. 400 journalists cooperating with the CIA, including some of the biggest names in the business, to consciously introduce the stories into the press.
That's actual disinformation, as opposed to Justin Trudeau, for example, in Canada, who says, we got to fight misinformation and disinformation. And now one of the secretaries at the UN came on and said, we created a task force to fight misinformation. I think referring to Twitter, because Twitter's now this jungle of misinformation, apparently, even though it's all citizen journalism.
We partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. We own the science. And we think that the world, should know it.
But yeah, so that I think you're right. It is an actual tactic.
There was a CIA study that came out a few years ago, and they studied the effectiveness of memes. And part of the study, they literally came out with like a whole folder full of meme templates. Now, according to the CIA, they don't actually use meme warfare, but we all know what that means. They're for sure flooding the internet with these kind of memes to sway the population one way or the other. I thought that was fascinating when I heard that.
Yeah, there's an interesting debate I have in my head, and Robert Kennedy said it very well. He said, and we all know this, that transparency is one of the number one issues in government, right? What are we actually doing, and who's doing it, and why? So part of me wants to say, you know what, make everything public, right? The CIA, every single thing. The other part of me is saying, well, I mean, China and Russia and Iran, whatever enemies we have, would love something like that because we'd expose our game plan. But then the other part of me says, well, you would rewrite the playbook if you did something like that. So, I mean, I don't think it'll ever happen where we'll just tell our enemies exactly what we're doing, but it's an interesting thought to go down.
Yeah, it is. I think in a lot of ways we do have to rewrite the playbook, though, because there's kind of a Cold War being waged against U.S. citizens and just citizens around the world, right? It's not like there's a whole bunch of talk about a civil war that could potentially happen, but like in my view, it's just going to be a Cold War that's, we're just going to have to stand our ground and walk into stores without a mask and just wear our Trump hats out and or whatever the symbol of freedom is in Canada. We're just going to have to not be scared of the public opinion or what the mainstream media says, and I think there's more of a majority thought process than we think there is, to be honest.
Yeah, the important question there is, who is the enemy? It's not our fellow citizens. I try not to belittle anybody, and there is an aspect that is tribal on both sides, where we say, you know, the other side's they're idiots, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I really feel like a lot of people are, you know, on the left are being controlled by the media. It's this trust that they have in the media, because, and it's also a confirmation bias. The media is saying things that they already feel are true because they're indoctrinated from a very young age to think these liberal ideas. So the thing is, they're not the enemy, you know. And like you're saying, we spoke about civil war, and if there is an armed rebellion, we're fighting against, first of all, one side has all the guns, so I don't know how that fight's going to go, but and knows how to use them. But they're not our enemies, right? It's just that they're useful idiots. Our real enemies are these extra national, you know, players, these people like at the WEF, the George Soroses of the world. They're the ones that are using this tactic that the CIA is using to kind of confuse the population and make us and pit us against each other. But so ultimately, I mean, if we unify, if we're able to kind of win the information war or gain traction in the information war and have both sides realize who the real enemy is, that's kind of the ultimate goal. But at the same time, we can't allow these people that have been indoctrinated destroy our cities and our states. You know, look at California. We don't need to say what's happening in California. We see it.
I think there's two things in that, and the first thing is that a lot of times people don't actually they don't know why they believe what they believe, and I talk about this a lot. Right? If you ask someone, "Do you like Trump?" "I hate him." "Why?" And they'll give you their surface answer, and then when you ask, "Well, what specifically did he do in that?" And it's very hard for someone to answer that 2 layers deep question, and a lot of times they'll just be flustered and they'll say, "Well," and my response is always like, well, if you don't know why you believe what you believe, then why should I believe you? And it's almost like the Socratic method, where I just ask questions until you can break down their position until they have none. The other aspect of that is that people really don't understand the political spectrum. Like, people call liberals leftist liberals, and there's no knowledge of the bifurcation between both of them. So you have to just really teach people, this is what leftism is. This is what liberalism is. This is what, you know, conservatism is. And I think when people realize just that very basic fact, they can actually say, oh, you know what? I actually agree with some of what they say, rather than saying all conservatives are stupid or something like that.
It goes along like with the abortion thing, right? So there's two sides. Many arguments are becoming absolute. The gun argument, the abortion argument. It's like, okay, there are people that are very religious that think that the moment of conception is where life begins. And that is it's not an extreme position, but that's the most conservative position you can have. And then the most leftist position you can have is we should actually be able to abort after the baby has exited the womb, right? There's two, and there's got to be a middle ground. But a lot of people, like we're saying, a lot of people that are more on the left side of the spectrum don't realize what's actually happening, don't realize that the extreme left is actually pushing for late-term abortion without any reasoning, without there being kind of a threat to the mother's health, right? So there's nuances that, and it's not a yes or no. It's not a pro-life, pro-choice situation. It's not a yes or no question. It's guns. It's not an absolute yes or no. And the nuances are lost in the tribalism of today, because there's no debates anymore. Like, make debates great again.
I 100% agree. I'm one of those people who believe that life begins at conception. And Fabian, I think you brought up this argument, but you know, if I'm right, then what you're doing is murder, right? And if you're wrong, or sorry, if you're right, then it's all hunky dory. But what's the bigger consequence here, right? Like, who is going to err the most if the other person is right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, that's kind of what I boil down to. And as far as the gun conversation goes, I mean, the US government just lost that $80 million airplane.
Yeah, 35.
like,
Yeah.
why was it getting lost in inclement weather, quote unquote? Like, and then you want me to potentially give up guns to you guys who are unbelievably incompetent. You can't even keep track of an $80 million airplane.
Yeah,
Like,
that's insane.
you miss me with that argument. Like, I'm not giving my guns up to you. There's no way. I'd rather
What
lose all my guns in a tragic boat accident than give it up to you guys.
Yeah, with the about the abortion issue, it's essentially I got my point from something called Pascal's wager, and he was this old philosopher, and he's basically said, if you believe in God and God is real, you go to heaven for eternity. If you don't believe in God and God is real, then you go to hell for eternity. That's a negative. If you don't believe in God and he's not real, nothing happens. And if you believe in God and I think I missed the last one, but essentially
Yeah,
there's
you got
more positives for believing in God than not believing in God. And it's the same with abortion. It's like, well, if no one could determine where life begins, because we don't even know what consciousness is as humans, we don't understand what it is, or we can't identify specifically what it is or when it begins, then why would you take that chance in making an incredibly bad mistake just because of selfishness and saying, well, I mean, 8 weeks is okay, some arbitrary number that has some finality to it. Like, well, if it's viable, like, what does that mean? There's no concrete level of like, okay, at this single point, the baby is now a human. If you can't tell me what specific point that is, and it's not like it's homogenous between all babies, right? Like nothing is homogenous. Then you might be making a very bad mistake that there's really no coming back from. So, the way I see it, and it is a little bit extreme. It's like it's either all or nothing. You can't pick an arbitrary figure and say, well, this is where I draw the line.
The important point here is, so for example, with Roe v. Wade, everybody's up in arms about Roe v. Wade. It goes to exactly what we're talking about. They don't understand what the, slashing of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court actually means. It doesn't mean they made abortion illegal. It means they sent it to the states. And that's what the US is founded on. Self-governance and this separation of the state, which has its own sovereignty, it has its own power. The US is a federation, right? And it goes also to the idea of national divorce. There was the Articles of Federation that were ratified in 1787. There was a long debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and it wound up that we decided to become a federation. But that means that at any point, if any of these sovereign states decide that they no longer want to be part of the union, there's mechanisms for that to happen, because there are ways where the federal government can abuse their power. But the idea with Roe v. Wade is that, all right, it's going down to the states. And something I've spoken about with other people is the country was founded with 4 million people roughly, right? And so each state had, maximum a couple 100,000 people. Now we're talking about states with, how many does California have? 35 million people, 40 million people? I think we've reached a point where we need to further bifurcate the sovereignty of communities, right? If you have a community with 100,000 people, we're talking that's the same number of people as a state in 1776, right? So,
but you're telling politicians to give up their power to more people.
Exactly.
That's
right.
the problem. That's the problem.
For sure.
But the idea is, look, if you want to, if a state decides that they want to legalize abortion for whatever reason, we're against that, right? But we also agree that the Constitution, the way it's set up so that states have their own jurisdiction, that's how we want to live. So you vote with your feet, you leave, right? You go to another state. And that's what we've seen that happen, right? With California, a lot of people going to Texas and Florida. Although we're against it, people can vote to decide what they want to do in their given state, right? They can vote for the death penalty for very arbitrary things. We could be very much against that, but
It's like fast food. I mean, nothing really pops in all areas, right? Unless you're McDonald's or Burger King. But you have these like regional fast food places because they succeed because it the palate of the people in that area like it. So, I mean, if you have states that some are going to be anti-abortion, some pro-abortion, that's really freedom. And even though we may not agree with what they decide to do, that's literally part of the reason why we have what we have.
Well, I think it comes down to personal responsibility, right? Because what you're talking about, with being the freedom to leave a state, you also have the freedom to stand up and actually join the fight in state senate, or join the school board, or do something like that. And I think that's where the left has really won in a lot of ways, is they've
100%.
radicalized a lot of people to, I mean, they've had a lot of people read the book Rules for Radicals, and they've just helped kind of appropriate the Democratic Party, which, I mean, if you go back, I don't know, 20, 30 years, it didn't even look like this, right?
Yeah.
And I think Fabian, you actually have an interesting story on that, right?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what they've done. I study this a lot, and what they've done is they weaponized language. They literally have weaponized language incredibly well, to the point where they have debates on what's the best way to divide people up, the best way to get them to feel like they don't fit in, the best way to make them believe that they're oppressed. All this leftist wokeist stuff right now. It's subjective oppression, right? Intersectionality. Well, yeah, you're black, but that's not enough oppression. If you're a black lesbian, there you go. Now you're extremely oppressed. There's like levels to it. And you basically go out and you tell people like, look, this is what I am. Imagine how oppressed I am. I'm more oppressed than you are. Well, yeah, but I'm an Indian queer gender studies teacher. Oh wow, so it's all narcissism. Like, how oppressed are you? And you go higher on that ladder, and then people bestow more adoration to you. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you can live. Wow, you're so brave. Instead of saying, wow, you're brave for having 4 kids and taking care of them all. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. They've become masters of gaslighting. And now something that I noticed was that this term gaslighting was becoming more prominent on the right. Conservatives were using this term and saying, well, this gaslighting is happening. And then they reappropriated the term gaslighting. I saw more and more on the left in the news, they started using the term gaslighting. They didn't even know what the hell it meant. But ultimately, you're right. It's a weaponization of language. And this is something that is repeatable throughout history, right? Every great society,
Yep.
there's certain signs that there is a decay of society. One of them is the abstraction of language. Any innovation, any kind of furthering of ideas, you need concrete, boxed up ideas that start with words, right? Words, I mean, this goes to in the beginning, there was the word. Language is what has differentiated us from, lower species, from animals. When we start to abstract that, and a perfect example is this gender thing. It's like when you lose the basic kind of as objective definition as there is of man and woman. When you lose that, I mean, then everything just goes downhill from there. And you're right, they've won the culture war. They've been fighting the culture war. We didn't even know we were fighting a culture war, right? We'll look at these 45, this list of 45 communist doctrines or rules that was put into the record in Congress in 1963. Well, I showed you guys briefly, but we can go through a couple of them. But this has been an explicit plan strategy that has been going on for a long time, for at least 60 years.
But people are starting to stand up now.
Yeah.
Michael, you had a story of this huge march, this huge protest in Canada. Why don't you shed some light on that? Because I'm not super well versed on what's happening up there right now.
Well, we could take a look at a clip of it. But yeah, Canada of all places. Canada has gone off the deep end with Justin Trudeau and this woke stuff. Justin Trudeau is a disaster. He's been in office, in power, because truly he's dictatorial in the way that he operates. He's been in power since 2015, and Canada has just gone from a country with some of the best opportunities for immigrants and for Canadian citizens, and it's gotten to a place where it's just everything's unaffordable. Inflation is, the official numbers of inflation is like 8%, but you go to the grocery store and stuff has increased 100%. It's insane. But yeah, we could watch a clip of it. So people that across the spectrum of religion, culture, race, that have gone together, and in every major city in Canada, Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, where they've had a march, which is basically a family pride march, and against the indoctrination of students. So it's basically leave our kids alone in schools. And we respect your way of life, but if you want to indoctrinate kids, go have your own kids.
So happy the Canadians are finally standing up, because
It's great.
Canadians are some of the nicest people, and I loved Canada. Like, after the US, it was my favorite country, but because people are so nice, I mean, it's not just Canada. The same thing happens in Sweden. In any society that's very peaceful, very calm, everyone respects everyone. When you have these outliers, this fringe that starts doing all this crazy stuff, the people don't say anything because they don't want to offend, because that's just life. So it takes them to the breaking point, which I believe they're at now, when we're all at, where niceness can only go so far. Now you have to, you literally have to become an activist. And I talked about this a while ago. It's like, you can watch from the sidelines, but at some point, when the sidelines touch your home and your kids and your family and your well-being, you have no other option than to activate yourself, right? Like, we've been a peaceful giant for so long, but now our morals are being torn down by things like, critical race theory and postmodernism, to the point where we got to say, no, like, enough is enough. And I was so happy to see that happening in Canada, because if they can do it in Canada, then, I mean, imagine what's going to happen, in the US, which is already happening, but at the scale it's going to happen. And my last point is, a beautiful thing is, like, I don't think the left saw this happening, where you have religions that are diametrically opposed to each other, or not opposed to each other, but, different, joining together and saying, enough is enough. This is not right. You have Muslims and Christians. It's like the great unifier that no one ever thought would happen. But you go after people's kids, and, you messed up, man.
Yeah. My question is, I mean, America, we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. So where is that energy here? Right? I would love to see people just flooding the streets, and in a peaceful protest, right? We don't want to get violence or anything like that, but like, I want people to start standing up for the kids and the future, and to lower taxes and the whole 9 yards. The story in Canada is awesome. I'm a little bit jealous of their energy. There was a story in the UK where a whole bunch of people there started to take down traffic cams, because the traffic cams were tracking people.
Blade Runners.
Yeah. The traffic cams were basically like giving people tickets for driving their high emission cars in the wrong area, and
Or
creating,
their older cars too.
right. And so they were basically starting to create like districts, like the Hunger Games in the UK, and it's essentially stopped, because the last report I saw, that they had destroyed 50,000 cameras.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think in some regions it's
and,
like 80% of the cameras in certain regions are down.
Yeah. And then in Minnesota, I saw a video where there's this like band of a few people, and they've been caught on Ring cameras, which is hilarious. I love those Ring videos, but they're taking down like gay and trans flags off of people's houses. Right. I don't necessarily condone it, because it's their property, but also I'm 100% for it, because that's garbage. But they're like taking down the flags from people's houses. Like, I know it's in America, but I mean, we gotta fight back like
Well,
that.
that's the beauty, man. It's like, individuality and freedom is so hard to break. I mean, the Germans tried it, Mao tried it, Stalin and Lenin tried it. You can go back to as far as you need to. It's super hard to break the will of people. And yeah, we may talk crap on Europe's, oh, they're a bunch of socialists and stuff like that, right? But that's just this like generality. There's people in each of those countries that feel the same way that we feel here. Maybe their society as a whole doesn't express it as much as we do, because we're the crazy Americans or whatever, according to them. But it's incredible to see that people all over the world still have values, and it's not even like their values; they're like some innate, just primal, maybe instincts to just let me do. I want to do what the hell I want to do.
Mhm.
And you're seeing that all over the world.
Liberty is, I mean, there's a number of quotes that don't necessarily come to mind right now, but it is something that needs to continuously be fought for and continuously be updated. And something happened in the 60s, 80s, 90s where the American life was, you know, thriving, and there was this avoidance of politics. You've posted a couple times, Gentry, or that I've seen a couple times, of, you know, not talking about politics at the table, not talking about religion and politics. It's like, well, that was a reality, and because everything was so good, you know, people that bought houses in the 70s or 80s, you know, their investment has, you know, gone 500% at least. That doesn't exist anymore, right? So there was complacency that grew with you know, comfort and prosperity, which is the quote of it takes hard men to create good times create weak men create hard times, right? That we saw happening, and we're in that phase. But now you're right. I think people are waking up, and it's reached a breaking point. And one other thing on that is Dr. Steve Turley, this guy on YouTube that I love his videos. He referenced the birth rate amongst conservatives versus liberals, or right and left. And there's no question that conservatives are having more kids than liberals. So there's a reason why they're needing to indoctrinate other people's children, because they're not having children, right? So at least we're kind of winning that side of the war, quote unquote, right?
Yeah, that's why Idiocracy is one of my favorite movies ever made, because it signals exactly what's happening in the world. It was such a great script, such a great script. So why don't we get to some of the more topical news that has happened in the last week? I know we all have a few stories that we want to bring up and talk about.
Yeah, let's. So I have a couple of these tabs open. Let me share the screen. So one of these quotes was talking about with liberty and democracy. I don't love the word democracy, because we don't have a system of democracy. We have democratic institutions, we have democratic practices within the republic, within the constitutional republic. And people confuse this idea. It's like, oh, democracy is in trouble. It's like, well, we don't have democracy, and we don't want democracy, right? We do want democratic processes within our system, because we want to have self-governance, but we want to have the rule of law, and we want to have this constitutional foundation that guides us. But so a democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasuries. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy, always followed by a dictatorship. That goes to the idea that a democracy is actually a decayed, if you have a full democracy, is actually a decayed version of a republic. And there is this process that happened in Rome in the late stages of the Roman Republic, where it then became an empire and had a Caesar, but that's an emperor, sorry.
I think this quote is spot on. I think the only difference with what we're seeing today is that it wasn't necessarily the public that found out that they could vote themselves money from the public treasury. It was the leftists, the socialists, that appropriated the Democratic Party and then told people that they could vote themselves money from the public treasury, right? Because I don't think back in the 70s, 80s, 90s that people really wanted to just get government cheese, right? Because that was, I mean,
Government
even that,
cheese, love it.
I mean,
Yeah.
even that whole phrase is like, oh, you're going to be dependent on the government. Like, what are you, a loser? So it kind of takes all the personal responsibility out of it, which is kind of a core tenet of what we believe as Americans and as free people. And I'm sure that's the same for Canada, Michael. But I think that our politicians, especially on the left, have just lied to people in a way that makes them want to just abandon every single American conservative ideology and just want big government. And now the left wants wars. They're pro war, they're pro big pharma, they're pro big business, and they're basically asking for this universal basic income, which is exactly what he's talking about here.
You know what's funny is I'm actually a fan of UBI. It may not be a popular opinion, but not when it's given out by the
Cancel.
government. Not when it's given out by the government. And the reason
We're
why,
done. We're
and
done here,
I
Fabian.
wasn't even going to talk about this. I was going to actually make a good point about the quote, but I'm a fan of UBI if it's done the right way, because the government has no control over it. So to actually lower, you get everyone off government help, whatever they're on, done. Cancel all that fat, done. And you have a system that essentially it's almost like Social Security, but for the people, created by innovation, and the government has no control over it. They don't like that because they can't say, well, look, we're going to give you this money because you have oppression, or because of equity, you get a little more than the white people. It really levels a playing.
Or because you don't have a man in the house with, single mothers.
It actually de-incentivizes making money, because if you're on the government teat and you start making money, now guess what? They're going to remove that benefit from you. So it behooves you to stay poor or to hide your income.
Oh yeah.
Or to do something off the books, because you still want that government cheese. But if it wasn't calculated based off how much you have or don't have, then it'd make things a lot better, in my opinion.
We're gonna have to unpack that separately, because I don't know about that, but we'll that's a discussion that we'll have for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious where the money's coming from, because Social Security is like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, if you're into that, like, I got a friend who's very successful, and he can help you make an extra $10,000 a month if you want.
Yeah, there's because I was a big fan of Andrew Yang when he ran, and his novel ideas of the way to do things to make the system different. Say this, we've been doing the same things for hundreds of years. We have technology now, guys. Like we can use that to make things better, but the government just doesn't want to do it. Anyway, I dived really deep into UBI, and if it's done right, and I can unpack a lot of the stuff that I've uncovered, but I think it's almost necessary. And even people like Elon Musk says it too. When you have automation doing everything, what is the human's job going to be in the future?
It's complicated though when it comes to human nature and what that incentivizes in people to become. I mean, so then they just kind of focus on leisure, and then they lose meaning in their lives. Then they kind of get depressed. It's a complicated discussion. Let's have that discussion.
It's a very philosophical question that I've thought a lot about, and clearly no one knows the answer, right? Because we've never had a society like that. But it's interesting to go down that road and to think, what would we do if we had no job, but we had the financial income to do things that we wanted? So there's a really interesting topic that we can have. Like, we can have a whole discussion on that, but it's really interesting to think about. And I think values really come into play at that point, because you have to have a motivating drive for your life to do something. And if it's not economical, what is it?
Then I can see us have a lot more Antifa people, like I think that people that are, you're going to have to convince us. It'll be an interesting exercise, actually, because off the top, to me, it's hard to fathom a way for that to be done properly, but we'll see. So quickly, actually, from what you said, Gentry, the main problem with democracy is that people are easily swayed. And if you control the flow of information, which is we're seeing that in real time, and it's not even a secret, right? It's not even covert or subversive anymore. It's in plain sight, where they're making essentially a ministry of truth, where they know the truth and they have complete control over the flow of it. That's why Twitter being bought by Elon is insane. That's like earth-shattering to the continuum of the leftist plan.
So is Trump getting elected?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. They did not see
Then
that
you
coming.
understand why they're after him so hard. He really threw a wrench in that whole thing, man. They had a plan. I mean, in my opinion, it would have been Hillary, and then probably Michelle Obama, and then Gavin Newsom or something like that. And Trump's like, nope, not yet.
The other thing that you mentioned, Gentry, is that people on the left used to be against, I think it was people on the left used to be against war, 1960s against the Vietnam War. They used to be against big corporations. Now they're like begging for big pharma to, bend them over. You had Rage Against the Machine, in the 80s, 90s, where they're like, F the government. And now they're like stooges for the Democratic Party. It's crazy to see that flip. But it just goes to show how easily swayed people are if the culture war is being fought without an opponent. People on the right have not even known there's a culture war being fought for a long time.
Yeah. Well, the left and the Democrats are so obsessed with the party flip because they don't want to have their, forefathers be responsible for slavery, right? They're just like, they're obsessed with, oh, there's a party flip. It's like, okay, well, like maybe, and, like just for the sake of argument, let's say it's like true. They're missing the party flip in front of their eyes. The party flip is happening again right now. I don't think it happened back then, by the way. I'm just saying for the sake of argument.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Like there's a party flip happening right now and they're completely missing it. Like 10 years ago, Democrats were like anti-war, they were anti-big government, they were like pro-antitrust lawsuits, they were skeptical of, they were like the granola people. Like I don't know how Portland and Seattle went from like, oh, let's have kale because it's weird and cool and new and healthy for you, to, oh, let's, inject ourselves with the seventh booster because it's weird and, people are telling us to do it. Like, I don't know, like they went so, they went so far out of the culture, and I don't get it.
Yeah, it was a very good job of the left to infiltrate that ideology with big corporation, because like you said, they've been mortal enemies for a long time. How did that happen? And I've actually thought about this a lot. And it seems to be that in addition to the, things like the World Economic Forum and all these globalist organizations that want to just control everything, in order to allow the government to do whatever they want from you, you have to trust the government. So they almost went from being slightly conservative in that they don't really trust the government in certain things, or big business, especially, to well, we love the government. We have to do everything they say. And they've done this by infiltrating all the branches of government, right? The FBI, give me one, and they've infiltrated it. And I think Jordan Peterson talks about this very well. And he says, how do they do that? Through human resources in a lot of public companies. And even private companies,
and taking over the university curriculums.
All these people.
That's the indoctrination aspect. Yeah.
All these people that are at the head of the military, at the head of the CIA, head of the FBI. The people within these organizations are salt of the earth Americans. The people at the top, the people that are running the show, are all Ivy League graduates, all people that have been indoctrinated for the last 30 years. What we've seen with Larry Fink and this ESG thing and BlackRock, Larry Fink comes out and literally says it. It's like, we shift the direction of these companies by targeting the salaries of these executives, right? They will no longer get their bonuses. They will no longer get their salaries if they don't comply to this ESG thing. So you have these executives that are directing the whole ship and taking it down, and it's like they don't care. They're gonna get their bonuses. They're gonna get their salaries. So I mean, if you look what happened obviously with Target and with Bud Light, and it's crazy to see them just literally tank their companies based on their ideologies that are just they had blinders on. They didn't realize that this is like a cultist kind of phenomenon. It's like they're living in a bubble. This is popular in their bubble, in their Ivy League school bubble, but it's not a reality. It's not what actual Americans and regular people think.
That's why
that entire BlackRock thing, man, is the biggest scam, Ponzi scheme, racket, whatever you want to call it. In a nutshell, all they do is they take your money, your retirement money. They convince all these funds to say, hey, give us your money. They use then that money to buy the majority stakes in tons of companies. Some like 80% of the S&P has the biggest shareholders, BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard. Then they say, hey, look, we have the most voting power that we're using because we got all these people's money. If you, the chairman or any member of the board, don't do what we say, guess what? We got all the voting share. We got all the voting power. So do this stupid stuff with this ESG stuff, or else guess what? You won't have a job. And it's so simple when you think about it, but it's ridiculous how complicated they try to make it seem like we're doing this for the people.
I've got a question going back to kind of what you were talking about, Michael, and I think this might be like a really interesting topic, because you mentioned before useful idiots, right? And they become useful idiots through indoctrination, through college, all that kind of stuff. But then when someone is like a high achiever on that career path, like when do they go from being a useful idiot to behind the curtain and part of the people pulling the strings? I think that'd be, I mean, I don't know the answer to that. Do you guys have a take?
You brought up something really interesting. When do you make that shift? And when do you become the good guy and you turn into a bad guy? Right? Because we've always, if you go historically and you look at all these socialist revolutions, you could look at like Mao's China or Stalin's Russia, whatever, Soviet Union rather. You've had the proletariat versus bourgeoisie, right? If it's cool to be poor, it's not cool to be intelligent. But now all we're pushing is school, university, school, leftist school. So at what point do they become the monster that they're saying, all these elitist and all these people? It's funny because if you live in a world where you don't understand critical thinking, like a lot of the leftists, they just throw that out the window, especially if there's postmodern leftists, right? Then there is no objective facts, just lived experience, or whatever the bull crap you want to call it. Then how do you understand that you are part of the people that you then despise or seemingly despise? It's like this dialectic that they've completely confuse these people that they don't even know what is real or where they fit, or that they're a cog in this massive socialist scheme to take over the world that hasn't worked time and time again, and now they're just trying it for another time.
It's a very interesting point because it's hard to see. There's a quote that I love to repeat is, if you're not a liberal when you're younger, you don't have a heart, and if you don't become conservative as you get older, you don't have a brain. So for some reason, these people, they live in this bubble where they're never exposed to the opposite opinion. And now with universities essentially outlawing debate and it being impossible to have debates, something has happened where you have speakers that are harassed. Any conservative speaker at these universities are harassed and protested by these insane fucking. It's insane.
Well, there's a reason why these people like Mao and people like the Taliban, they shut down the universities. There's a specific reason, because that's where the debate happens. That's where that critical thinking happens. You shut that down and there's no debate anywhere.
Yeah. And without debate, you don't have any. You can't. I mean, we do this internally, right? If you're a critical thinking human being, we have ideas that are in contrast with one another, that are combating one another, and we kind of have to break them down, pit them against one another. We get rid of one of them, and then we build from there. So we debate within ourselves if we're critical thinking. A lot of people have lost the capacity to think critically. I was a Bernie bro in 2016. I like before the election. I come from Canada.
Wow, that's a bombshell. I think we need a bombshell sound right now.
No, well, so
for in Canada, we're essentially socialist. We have socialized healthcare and socialized university to a certain extent. And I thought the system was, working fine. But as who opened my eyes was Jordan Peterson, actually. When I started delving into Jordan Peterson, he puts things into such context that's just, I think it's irrefutable. People that oppose Jordan Peterson have just never listened to him because he's just like pure logic and reason. But so we develop ideas, and if we're not confronted with opposing ideas, we just stay down this path and become extremists to a certain extent. So everybody in these Ivy League schools, they have been indoctrinated so thoroughly, and once you reach a certain age, it's very, that shift, that switch is not happening anymore. But so the question is, when does that switch happen from, you're well-intentioned, you leave university, you go work at these firms, and then when does that switch happen where you're aware that you're actually being subversive? You're aware that you're really trying to, overhaul the system because you think your ideas are better. But ultimately, it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I think even people like, maybe not George Soros, because he's a sociopath and he's like a failed philosopher that just wants power. But these people, I think it all boils down to climate change. They truly think that the world is coming to an end because of human beings. And they think that they need to, subvert democracy and have this, world government so that we can save the planet. And their intentions are good within themselves, but their actions are just evil. When you have the end of the world on your mind, any action is validated to get to that goal of saving the planet, right? So it's tough to know where that switch happens, where they go from stooges to actively fighting. I think we can have a whole discussion about that and do a little more research into that, Gentry.
Yeah. So do you actually think that, I know the useful idiots think that climate change is real, but how many people do you think at the top think that climate change is real?
I think they truly believe it. I think Bill Gates,
Larry
Really?
Fink.
Klaus Schwab, I think they truly believe it.
No, I disagree with that. To me, it's how much are they paying you to say what you want them to say. But Hitler says if you repeat a lie enough, it becomes truth. And in a world where no one even knows what's real anymore,
Hmm.
it's very easy to get into one of these philosophies or ideologies, whatever you want to call it, and start believing it, because they weaponize good intentions extremely well. Like, what more benevolent goal is there, or could there be, other than saving the world? Do you feel like a superhero?
Exactly.
Right? You don't have to have kids anymore. All you have to do is recycle your trash, and now you're put up on a pedestal of being the world's best person ever. It's really easy. It's just like the dopamine hits that we get from social media. It's super easy to get that kick without even leaving your chair. And that's what they want. Clearly we know they want digital slavery, 15-minute cities. They want to keep you in your little bubble. Ready Player One was a great example of that, where you're just, you basically you owe money to this company, so you have to go play and find stuff for them. That's not too far from the future reality that I think these people want.
But so you guys think that it's completely power play, that they don't believe anything of what they're saying? You think that what about Al Gore and John Kerry? You think they don't believe it?
Well, I don't think they were high enough on the totem pole, to be honest.
So you think the top then?
Yeah.
Larry Fink, you don't think that he believes this climate change ESG stuff?
I think he's obsessed with power.
Yep.
And he's trying to get it in the way that he sees fit, which is to enslave people. And to be honest, I think a lot of these guys, the core driver is they are so afraid of death, because they don't believe in life after death. And so this is all they have. And so if they can, they have the resources to go research and do all this stuff. So, if there's a way to make the most of this life, which, there's even a verse in Matthew. It's like, what is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul? And they're playing that out like perfectly. But I think their big driver is that they're just scared to death of death.
Yeah, and something to go along that point is, and kind of to touch on the Bill Gates thing, let's say Bill Gates didn't know in the beginning about climate change. He really wanted to help and say, is this real? What does he then do? He gives a bunch of money to a bunch of scientists to go do a bunch of stuff. As a scientist, your job security is predicated on the fact that, like, if I tell him, yeah, this is going on, he's going to keep paying me. If I say, hey, nothing here, all right, thank you for your work, see you later. Like, so you're incentivized.
It's a feedback loop.
It really is.
Loop.
Yeah. You can't.
So that's why I think they truly believe it, because
look, you have to be scientifically illiterate to think that this narrative of climate change is a reality.
Yeah, and
you really do.
This one is
It's
really
basic
not that strong.
science. It's basic
the whole
science.
narrative is not that strong neither.
Right. It's like a child came up with it. It's so not elegant as a theory as well, that carbon dioxide. What?
I said, and then you push Greta.
Yeah, right. I mean,
and she just really kills the whole.
Dude, it's a production. It's a Hollywood production, the whole thing.
Oh, you see now she's getting arrested now?
Oh yeah.
For the second time.
Again?
With a big smile, yeah. And you saw Zelensky at the UN. So now he's going to come to the US to come ask for more money, but before that he stopped at the UN and gave a speech about climate change.
Yeah, what sucks is, like, that guy will say anything he needs to say to get money for his country. So but
it's not even for his country, man. Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, actually. But imagine, you're like, hey guys, like, we're getting destroyed by Russia. We need stuff. All right, you got to say this. You got to let BlackRock get a massive contract to rebuild your country. You got to make sure that everyone knows that being queer is okay. Like, all these things that they never did, all of a sudden they're in a rush to modernize, to be part of, the crew. Yeah, it's crazy. There's everybody wants to make money off Ukraine.
Well, what would really help climate change if they just stopped fighting.
That would really help. I think more than me having a plastic, like a paper straw.
Oh my gosh. That
Come on,
argument
Plastic
Gentry.
is
wrapper.
Come on, Gentry. I feel
unbelievably
it.
ridiculous. Okay, so I've spent in the last 10 years, I've probably spent 6 months in Indonesia. And Southeast Asia is one of the dirtiest places. Just Asia in general is one of the dirtiest places in the whole world. So in 2014, I was there for 3 months, and we went to this harbor in Jakarta, full full of garbage, like feet of garbage, like two, three
That's
feet of
our
garbage. And
recycling,
this,
right?
well, no, so it's unbelievably arrogant of Americans, and I think Seattle was one of the first places to come out with this this
Yeah.
paper straw, which, by the way, is garbage. It decomposes in like 3 seconds. You can't even have a coffee. It's ridiculous.
Also, sorry, on that note, they're showing that they're very unhealthy as well. They're showing that there's these chemicals in these paper straws that are, yeah, there's a study that came out showing that it has these forever chemicals, I believe. Anyways, go ahead, sorry. So that's another aspect.
It's like
That's wild. But if you look at the amount of waste that the U.S. puts out, I think it's either 0.25% or 2% of all the waste in that big like bubble in the ocean, right? Not the bubble, but the big like waste thing in the ocean. But 90% of it is coming from Asia, and so it's unbelievably just arrogant or stupid or whatever to ban straws because of that picture of the turtle of the straw through his nose. Which, by the way, have you guys ever thought about how a turtle gets a straw through his nose? Like you'd have to like bend it and put it in. Like there's no way that that's getting in there. Anyway, like I think if
It's a masterclass in propaganda. Honestly, they took one picture and
yeah, I think if Trump or Vivek or whoever is running wants to really make a stand on cleaning up the planet, not climate change, but cleaning up the planet, just say we're going to put sanctions on China and other Asian countries that they can't import until they reduce their garbage level by whatever percent, because they're creating so much waste in the world. But then here's the other thing on the climate debate that people don't necessarily know about is that big trash ball in the ocean is now becoming a habitat for fish. Now, it may not be like the healthiest, but the world is regenerative by design so that
and
it can
adaptive.
and adaptive, so it can withstand a lot of stuff. There was a landfill in New Jersey that stopped being a landfill, I think in the 90s or the 80s or something like that. And 20 years later, they turned it into this beautiful park because like trees and grass and all this vegetation grew up on top of it, but it's a landfill. And they just let it sit and it just adapted. And so this whole idea that we're destroying the earth, I think there is a little bit of merit to it because we do want to take better care of the earth, but it's not America.
Well,
Like,
the
we're one of the
this
cleanest places in the world. When I got back from my trip from Indonesia, I kissed the ground. I was like,
yeah.
I'm so thankful. I love Bali. I love Indonesia, but I love America more.
Yeah. And that's you bring up a few good points is for the whole paper straw thing. Again, it's just people feel like they've done something for society when they go, look, we got that passed because I
Mm-hmm.
helped because I post something on Instagram and it played a little part in passing the law, right? And so they feel like it's that they had a part in it and they feel, I don't know, whatever you feel when you think you change the world by, doing one tiny thing. The other thing is that with the whole garbage debate and you bring up it's becoming a habitat now for fishes, is technology is incredible. It's literally incredible. Clearly, everyone knows it's made our world what it is today. We have the most comfortable lives anyone has ever had. I mean, kings couldn't even dream of what we're doing right now, where we're talking in different parts of the world. Just a few hundred years ago, it's absolutely incredible, and that's why people complain so much because they don't understand that. You take away technology, you want degrowth, right? You want to stop shipping and all flights. You're going to be in for a hell of a world. Ask the people who grew up in Mao's China what they had to do every single day. Like that's really hard. So you want communism? There it is. Just go research it. Thankfully, we know that it doesn't work, and thankfully, we have images and footage and reports from people who did live during those times. So to me, it's like, how can you be so stupid and support this communistic type of reality that you want in the life, when we've already tried that multiple times, and every single time it's ended up the same. 60 million people under Mao, what, right? How many millions of people under Stalin? The exact same thing. And then they say, well, we didn't really try real communism. Like, come on, you think your 23-year-old gender studies narcissistic ass really understands what communism is and knows more than Mao and knows more than these people? Like, come on, give me a break.
The entitlement is insane. It's crazy. I mean, but like we've all been there when we were younger, and we felt like we were, we knew everything. Even at 16 years old, we thought, or 14 years old, we thought our parents were morons, right? And as you get older, you realize, oh shit, I didn't know anything, and clearly they knew what they were doing.
But now we're telling these kids that they're right in the way they think. We're telling them, yep, get gender reassignment surgery. Yep. You know what? Your view of the world is
I'm not telling kids
right.
that.
No. Yeah, we're not. But actually, I just shared a post. Girls being asked questions about tattoos and whether or not 12-year-olds should be able to get tattoos, and they're like, "You saw that, right?"
Yeah.
It almost looks staged. It almost looks like a parody, right? But it makes sense in their heads somehow. It's crazy. And then they're asked about gender reassignment surgery. They're like, "Oh no, they know." They know what their gender is at 12 years old. Oof, my goodness. There's cognitive dissonance, and then there's just stupidity. It's like you don't have any critical thinking capacity to see that this, and they even say it. They're like, yeah, it's a little hypocritical, but no, I think that they know. It's just pure indoctrination, and so deep. It's so ingrained in them that they're like, oh no, no matter how much this contradicts my other ideas and my logic, I still am going to lean this way. Piggybacking on your point, Fabian, the poor in America have a better standard of living. Like the poorest in America have a better standard of living than 90% of the planet 20 years ago. And even today, more than 50% of the planet easily. There's a video that I posted that went very viral, and I stole it from somewhere else, obviously, but it's some homeless guy in California who's like, man, I'm homeless by choice. I get $800 check every month. I have an iPhone with Netflix and 3G on my phone. It's like they pay me to be homeless, essentially. California is essentially. Have you seen this? No.
No, I haven't seen it. That's wild.
Yeah, no, it's well, actually it'd be worth kind of looking at and commenting on. Let's see.
Louisiana, Texas area.
How long you been in San Francisco?
Since June. If you're gonna be homeless, it's pretty easy here. I mean, if we're gonna be realistic, they pay you to be homeless here.
When you said that San Francisco pays people to be homeless, what did you mean by that? You mean that literally?
Yeah. I mean, I get $620 a month, dude.
From general assistance,
yeah.
Or how was that hard to get?
Phone call, bro. Phone call. 200 food stamps and $620 cash a month.
Wow.
Forget about it. Why wouldn't I do it? It's free money, dude. Yeah. This right now is literally by choice. Literally by choice. Like, why would I want to pay rent? I'm not doing I got a cell phone that I have Amazon Prime and Netflix on.
So,
I mean, I saw this video before, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying. With all these government programs, they want to make you clearly reliable on the government for everything that you have. And if you make one penny, hey, guess what? Number one, we're taking away all your stuff. Make sure you vote for us, because if they get in power, they're gonna, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna axe this program. You're gonna be shit out of luck. You got to go get a job.
Oh my god!
And you don't want that. So keep voting Democrat. We got your back.
No, that's all it is. San Francisco is like literally going downhill. There was like a water break that created a sinkhole in the city a couple weeks ago, or maybe just a week ago.
Let's take a look at it here.
I mean, this is pretty crazy.
Crews working into the night in San Francisco to fix a water main break that happened late Sunday and led to a sinkhole Monday.
20 minutes.
Look at this.
20 minutes that's been going.
You're looking at video recorded on Fillmore Street in the Cow Hollow neighborhood of San Francisco Sunday night.
Water was you know, kind of like a river gushing and coming, you could see it was coming all the way down the streets.
Cyril Kollick recorded this video Sunday at Union and Fillmore
My
Street.
goodness.
And this is what it looked like
Just
on
collapsed.
Monday evening. The sand and water cleared from that area.
I'm in shock. I mean, we live right down this street, and we didn't even know this was going on. It does feel
I
like
love
the city's
these
getting
interviews with
pretty
people,
old.
random
But
people.
while there is
It's
a
just so crazy.
multi-billion-dollar plan to improve infrastructure, including replacing pipes in San Francisco, crews tell us the water main that broke was installed.
It was probably
in
racist. That's why it broke.
1949.
But not nearly as old as some in San Francisco.
San Francisco has pipes that are well over 100
this is
years old.
this is just a product of our
brick.
failing
This
infrastructure,
one was-
man.
Well, and I know it's not necessarily Nancy Pelosi's fault that these pipes are unbelievably old, but it just adds insult to injury to everything else that's happening in San Francisco, right?
I mean,
Like
they
all
have
the
a
crime,
50%
all the.
tax.
I mean,
Where's that
in the
money
city,
going?
Where do you think maybe it's going into Nancy's pocket? I mean, she's made some incredible trades. She's apparently a better trader than Warren Buffett in the
She's the best
last
trader in the world.
40 years, which is wild. But her city is falling apart, and I think we contribute a lot of that craziness to all the terrible laws that they're passing, and she's part of that. But I don't know how she can justify running for re-election when she's been in there for like 40 plus years, you know, in various positions, and she still wants to run again, even though she's like older than dirt. Her face is falling off. Like I don't I don't even
She
get
has a
it.
very good Botox lady. She has a very good Botox lady for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I mean, I couldn't
think
imagine
about
her
it.
without Botox. Jeez.
Yeah. Well,
but once you start, you can't stop, right? I mean, especially at that age.
Right.
Well, if you think about California, what's crazy is, okay, so all the money, all the tax goes to the general fund, right? And then they distribute that however they want. If you use that money to make the city nicer, you know, when you have nice cities, you hold yourself to a higher standard. Like if you go to places in Texas or, you know, wherever, it doesn't matter. You know what a nice city is when you live there. You hold you hold yourself to a higher standard, just like if you're in church, right? You're not going to dress down, you're going to dress up. If you don't fix the cities and you wait for it to get, you know, in the condition it is, well, number one, you can make more money by repairing it because it's an emergency, right? You don't have to get it passed. It's just, guys, we got to do it. Look at the water. And the second is you get people used to living in that kind of horrible situation. And then you say, this is not our fault. This is the fault of the other side. We're trying to make it better. So keep voting for us. You know, like every condition is just make people believe that you have the answer and look at the problem when they create the problem and then give you the answer. But people don't understand that.
Did you guys see the interview with Gavin Newsom and Sean Hannity? This was a little while ago, but
I saw some of it. Yeah,
saw bits of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sean Hannity, I don't know what he did in that interview, but he made Gavin Newsom look good. But Gavin Newsom, you know, since he's taken office, he was like being friendly, like very friendly with him, and almost like obsequious, like kind of subservient, almost like, I don't know what it was, but so he was asking, you know, very easy questions and not disputing any of the nonsense that Gavin Newsom was saying.
Oh, you think they're a little bit mad at Trump for what he did?
I don't know what it was, but I think he just wasn't ready, because look, Gavin Newsom is a skilled politician. If nothing else, he's a skilled politician, right? Like, this guy is arguably the best candidate they have for president on the left.
Well, they're pushing Biden out now.
That's why they indicted Hunter, you think?
They want to get rid of Biden. His poll numbers, yeah, it's clear. Poll numbers are not there. Man, imagine him in a debate.
Poll numbers don't matter, dude. 2020, he didn't even campaign, right? There was 10 people at any of his little rallies, and I mean, we know what happened with the election. We're not going to talk about it. We'll talk about it on Rumble and Twitter and stuff. But I mean, you don't need to have somebody campaign when you're counting the votes. You've seen that video of Biden say they want to count the votes. It's who counts the votes that matter. And the clip of him saying we put together the biggest voter fraud organization.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's such a Freudian slip.
So Trump gets indicted for saying "find me votes," and Biden doesn't get indicted for saying that kind of stuff. It's a two-tiered, two-leveled
everything.
Part of me doesn't want to believe this, but the other part says, well, it goes along with the playbook. He is literally saying what they are doing, and we're saying, oh, it's just because he's old. Is it though? Or now, or does he have is he literally saying exactly what they're doing? So you can't say, hey, you were lying. It's like, no, I said that. Just because you didn't believe me,
that's what we're doing.
You thought it was because I'm old. No, literally said what they're doing.
Did you guys see the Time article right after the 2020 election? You saw it, right?
Yeah.
Basically, they're saying what they did in the election, and it's like all of this, the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Pretty much everything in here, if Republicans did it, the left would be up in arms. It's illegal essentially what they did, right?
Didn't they even use the word cabal?
Probably. Let's see. Yeah,
a well-funded cabal of powerful people.
The secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across. And so it sounds like that because it is. They were not rigging the election. They were fortifying it. Oh, fortifying it. This is where you control the language. You change definitions of words. And at that point, nothing means anything anymore. Hunter Biden didn't smoke crack, even though we have it on video. This is misinformation. Oh, it's misinformation. This is doctored footage of him smoking crack and being with allegedly underage prostitutes. Yeah. Don't believe your own eyes. Believe what we say. The media is. There's a funny clip of that woman from MSNBC, who's on with Joe. It's Joe and Mika, and she's talking about Trump, basically directing the narrative, and she's like, that's our job. That's our job to tell you what reality is. It's true.
Well, and I think that the dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Yeah, if you look at the issues.
That is how they feel. They feel like if it doesn't come out of their mouths, it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like we're saying, they're doing it on purpose. Like they know they've had that switch and they're actively doing it. It's hard to know which is which because they're so full of it.
Well, they're saying the quiet part out loud now, which I think is interesting. They're showing more of their handbook, and I don't know why. It might be a move of desperation, to be honest. I think they know they're losing because their ratings are going down, their sponsorship money's drying up. I don't know how some of these folks still have some contracts. Like CNN is.
How does it exist?
They must have some crazy private equity guy that doesn't care about losing millions and millions of dollars, because there's no way they're hitting their numbers.
Yeah, no,
I think in a few years it's going to be done.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, they are the mouthpiece for that side. So you have to support, if you're a leftist or whatever, you have to support that. That's their biggest mouthpiece. That's like, conservatives and Fox News, or at least was. It's a calculated loss, right? Like it's an investment. It's a part of the bigger plan. Yeah, and if you look, and even Tucker talks about this, the share of viewers that follow mainstream media compared to alternative media, and that could be anything that's not legacy, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, is drastically rising. So it's distributing the media in a way that people like, Jeff Bezos and George Soros and all these people who own these organizations don't like, because it's a distribution of ideas, which is great, and then with Elon getting Twitter, it just literally opens that up to a whole other world. And I think, and I don't even know if he really understood the ramifications of what he was doing. Maybe he didn't, I don't know. I initially thought it was just because it's more marketing for him, right? Tesla spends zero on marketing. He is our marketing guy. And buying Twitter, it's an investment, because then you can sell anything you want. You can sell as many ads as you want, or run as many ads for free. But yeah, I mean, it's been incredible to see how the world is really woken up. They're really woken up, not woke. and seeing all these things, and then with the ability of Twitter now to just so I find stuff on Twitter that I can't find anywhere else on the internet anymore. It's been scrubbed. It's been scrubbed. Like Google, Joan Rivers talks or calls Michelle Obama trans.
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman
we
president?
already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a trans.
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh. It's okay.
It's nowhere. I went to the YouTube page of CNN. They have the headline, but they changed the clip out. And the comments say, the fact that you guys changed this clip tells me this is, like very basically gives it validity. It's crazy. And I actually have a bunch of tabs. I wanted to make a video on this, but I don't know how I'm going to get it past Instagram's filters and all that. So I had to go find the video on Twitter. You can't find it on Google.
So it would be interesting to see, we saw the involvement of the FBI and the intelligence agencies at Twitter. It'd be interesting to see if CNN is literally just it's the fourth branch of government. The media is the fourth branch of the government. Do you guys know Immortal Technique, the rapper? He has a song called "The Fourth Branch of the Government," and he's talking about MK Ultra, suggestive thinking, causing your perspective to change. I mean, this is basically the game plan to control the media, and the media has been it went from controlling the media, mainstream media, then controlling social media, and then now they have the fact checking, right? Like these people like George Soros are buying up fact checking and starting fact checking companies. Everybody on the conservative side of the aisle knows that if it's fact checked, it's probably true. Like if it's fact checked by Politico or one of these, AP or whatever the hell they are, there's a reason it's being fact checked, and it's probably because they don't like it, right? So it's backfiring with people on the right, obviously, but on the people on the left, they see that and they're like, oh, it's been debunked, it's been fact checked. So we know that the media has been bought up. We saw the social media, infiltration, and how they saw that Trump, used Twitter to essentially win the 2016 election, which is epic, right? It's just, I mean, they put such a concerted effort into getting him off Twitter, which is, a landmark moment in history, actually. They censored the president of the United States and somehow justified that. Mind-blowing. But yeah, so look, we can go on and on about this. Maybe we wrap up, and what do you guys think?
Well, guys, it's been an amazing episode, especially for our first one. I hope everyone listening got a lot of edification and learned a lot. We can't wait to bring you more episodes like this. So expect a weekly episode coming from Breakaway USA. And on behalf of myself, Mike, and Gentry, I want to thank you for all being here, and we will see you next time.
Yes, sir.
Bye, guys.